We like to call it the Supernatural Hour. And now, our hosts.
Hey, welcome to the Supernatural Hour. I am Raven, your host.
I'm Rogue.
This is Doc.
And Chad's here.
So tonight we are actually going to be doing something we haven't done for a long time. We're going to talk about a case that Ed and Lorraine Warren did, and it's like a twofer. We're also going to do The Devil Made Me Do It, The Conjuring 3, if you've seen that. So it's going to be, we're going to talk about the actual case, and then we're going to do a movie review, and then we're going to talk about how they go together.
So, spoiler alert, there's probably going to be ghosts.
Well, and here's your spoiler alert. If you haven't seen Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It yet, you just hit the pause button, go watch the movie, and come back, because we told you so. We don't want to spoil it for you.
We're going to talk about it.
All right. So, to our main topic. Everybody here has watched The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It. And again, here's your spoiler alert.
The devil made you watch it, The Conjuring?
The devil made me do it.
The Devil Made Me Do It.
Oh, okay.
If you haven't seen this and you don't want any spoilers, turn us off and come back and listen to us this episode after you've watched the movie. I've warned you twice now, so if we spoil it for you, it is not our fault. It's on you now. So this is about a case that Ed and Lorraine Warren did. It started in 1980. So it's about a Gletzel family, and the Gletzel family bought a home in Connecticut, and they wanted to make it a rental. And so they were, doing some remodeling and doing, cleaning it out, doing all that stuff that you're going to do before you rent it out or sell it. Now, they had an 11-year-old son, and his name is David Gletzel. And he started telling his family that he was seeing the spirit of an angry man. And they didn't really pay much attention to him. He's 11. They're in a new place. They're thinking, it's imaginary friend.
An angry imaginary friend.
Right. Okay. Angry imaginary friend. Okay, your imaginary friend's a little old man. Okay, awesome. Well, this little old man started to push him. And
physically, right?
Physically push him. And so he would say, Mom, this angry man is pushing me. Well, they kind of got on his case because they thought he was saying this to get out of his chores. He's 11.
Yeah, and attention seeking and all of that stuff.
Yeah, they thought he was making it up. And he started after a while to tell them, the spirit is telling me, this grumpy old man is telling me that if we move into this house, it's going to hurt us. And they're thinking, whatever.
Yeah, we're not going to listen to a grumpy old man, imaginary friend.
Right. Dressed in plaid and Levi's, by the way.
He's just a lumberjack, basically.
Burned lumberjack.
Right. Well, it turned from just grumpy old man to burned, and he would started to speak Latin, and David started describing him as a little less than human. Big black eyes, a thin face with kind of some animal features, jagged teeth, pointed ears, and hooves.
Yeah, none of those things sound human.
Yeah, hooves like a deer.
And when I heard that, I thought, I have not that I'm like the foremost expert ever, but I've been around the block a time or two, and we've actually had a case, our team, and we've talked about it on the podcast a time or two in Twilla, where the couple actually said that they saw hoof prints outside their windows, associated with noises that they'd heard and knocking that they heard, and this case actually was a man that was full-on possessed. And so, and we also know that these demonic entities, as we call them type 3s, cannot form a perfect human body. There's always something wrong. And I think hooves is something wrong, because I don't see people walking around with hooves.
Right. I was about to say, one of the creepiest things is when you have something that's human-like but not quite there, and you just know that something's a little bit off. I mean, hoofs is pretty obvious, but there's a lot. That's why people have weird phobias with dolls and things, is because they have that human form, but they're not quite there. There's just something
kind of like the black-eyed children.
Yeah, exactly. There's that feature that just makes you go, don't love this.
Yeah, and that's, one thing that is taught is if you see an apparition and you're wondering if it's, a spirit of an actual loved one or something manifesting, trying to be a loved one, look it over really good. Do they have all their ears and their fingers and their feet and their nose? Really give it a good look. If there's something missing, it is not a good spirit, because an evil spirit, a demonic spirit, cannot
Perfectly replicate.
perfectly replicate. There's going to be something wrong. I mean, even with Lucy, she can't do eyes.
Mm-hmm.
She has no eyes.
There's just a void basically there.
Black holes there. So anyway, seeing this entity with hooves and jagged teeth and turning more animal than grumpy old man, I think would be disturbing. But then on top of it, David, and again he's 11, he began having seizures, getting some bizarre injuries. He would start growling and hissing. And I have kids. We've all had kids. Kids make weird noises, but there's a point where you go, that's not right.
Right. I listened to some of the audio with, some of these interactions, and you just go, this doesn't sound like an 11-year-old. This is a little intense.
Right. And there's just that feeling. When you hear a demonic growl, there's just a feeling that goes through you where you go, oh.
Yeah, that ain't good.
This is not good.
So when you were going through your research, did you get to the point of how this really originated? And I guess I ask because I did run across it. I ran across an old Ed and Lorraine Warren TV show, one of their TV shows that they put out on PBS about this case.
No, go ahead.
Now that I say that, now I lost my notes.
While you're looking for those, just two other things that they really kind of stood out. He would start reciting Bible passages.
He, the boy?
The boy, David. And, through David anyway. And then he's also started quoting John Milton's Paradise Lost. And if you're not familiar with what this is, John Milton was an English poet in the 1600s. And Paradise Lost was printed in 1667. And it's basically a poem of a biblical story of the fall of man, the temptation of Adam and Eve, and, by Satan and their expulsion from the Garden of Eden. And it's in 1600 prose.
Right.
It's not something an 11-year-old's going to read.
An odd choice for a child,
Right.
Yes, indeed.
It's not light reading for an 11-year-old in 1980.
Paradise Lost.
An 11-year-old that was a little mentally challenged as well. I
Right.
think he may have been autistic a little bit.
Which could be why they targeted him, because there was a chink in his armor.
His weakness, right. So, per Ed and Lorraine Warren, the mother and sister had gone snowmobiling, and they ran into some strangers that practiced witchcraft, and they decided to hang out with them for a little while and do some conjuring. And in that, they don't show up right when you ask them to, but they'll show up a little bit later, and that's what originated bringing the old
witches.
Yeah.
Snowmobiling witches.
And that is the one thing that, as I was doing in my research, I did not get into was, why would it pick on this 11-year-old
boy? And they were talking about that David was building a little toy dinosaur, and they actually had it. So it's one of the objects that's in their museum. And as soon as he was done building this dinosaur, it became animated. And once it became animated, that was when they started to go, oh, something's wrong here.
Something's wrong.
Having a Toy Story moment here.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't Rex from Toy Story, probably.
Right. No, a little bit before Rex's time. Yeah.
Yeah, probably not.
So this is based off of the 1980 book, The Devil in Connecticut, that was written by Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Right, they wrote a book about it. So all this is going on. The family obviously gets to a point where they're saying, well, this is not normal. Maybe we need to call someone to take care of this. And so they actually called the Catholic Church and said, we need an exorcism. And the Catholic Church said no. And so they were like, well, dang. So they lived in Connecticut. Ed and Lorraine Warren also lived in Connecticut. So they called them up and said, we need some help. So Ed and Lorraine Warren hop in the car, drive over. I'm simplifying this, obviously. But after several meetings with the family, they say that they have witnessed David levitating. They have seen him being beaten by unseen hands, and he started to tell things about the future, started to predict future. And after doing some investigating, they determined that he was possessed by not one, but 43 separate entities.
Well, it's interesting to me that he was reciting Bible verses, right? Like, it's a weird thing that you wouldn't expect a demon to do.
You'd almost think it would be in a mocking way.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's, they mock.
Right.
And the 43 entities, to me, rings true because we have run into little type 3s. Nothing like Ed and Lorraine Warren have run into. But in order to have that much power to do those things, I would think you would need a lot.
It's kind of a We Are Legion moment.
Exactly.
Kind of thing where you have just an overwhelming amount of occupiers, I guess you could say.
Yes.
And that's different than the I Am Legend movie.
Yes.
We Are Legion is more of the, casting them into the swines, jumping off the cliff kind of thing.
That's more of a New
Biblical.
Testament.
More New Testament, less Will Smith. Yes.
So anyway, when you sit down and you're talking to a family and studying their son and seeing things and determine that they've got 43 evil spirits occupying their body, they said, maybe we needed to get an exorcism. So they were able to find... Now, if you're familiar with Ed Warren, he is the only demonologist authorized by the Catholic Church to do an exorcism. But this, at least at that time, I don't know if that's changed, but for a long time.
And there was only like 9 total or 8 total, and he was one of the 8, and all of the other were Catholic.
Right,
Clergy.
he was only non-Catholic.
They were all in Italy, hanging out at the Vatican.
So he did not do this one. He actually found a priest that would do it. And so they bring this priest in. They actually performed 3 exorcisms on this child. So
There were 9, total of 9 priests.
9 priests that came in eventually.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
7 of them, or 3 of them directly from the Vatican.
Were the Warrens Catholic?
They were.
Yes.
They were. That's why he had the authorization to perform the exorcisms.
Well, the Catholic Church, yes, and the Catholic Church came to them for help to begin with, so,
Oh, interesting.
yeah. They were Father... don't ask me questions because I don't ever remember anything. But I can tell you because I do have notes.
Oh, at least somebody came prepared.
Father Dennis, because I can't remember that. Father Dennis is the one who brought the Warrens in. And the Warrens originally brought in a medical doctor to make sure that there wasn't something medically wrong with the child to
Right.
begin with.
I've heard that's pretty standard practice with exorcisms, is they have to rule out medical causes before they really start pursuing this
Right.
spiritual thing. They need to make sure that this isn't a psychiatric condition.
Right.
So Roque and I both took a demonology class, a course, quite an extensive course, and that's one of the lessons in the course is you need to rule out mental illness, and
Right.
there have been, or not mental illness,
And physical illness.
just physical things, and it states very emphatically in there, don't diagnose. Legally you cannot diagnose unless you have certain qualifications.
Credentials.
Medical
Hey,
credentials.
someone in this room has those. Just saying.
Hey.
That's
but-
scary.
So you're saying I'm
Right.
crazy.
Terrifying, right?
But
They trust me to do this? Oh my gosh.
But we
Yeah.
can ask questions on residentials, and I have been to a couple of residentials where I've had to ask, are you taking any medications? And
Right.
are there any physical things that you're dealing with that could cause some of
Right.
these things to happen?
And it's not unusual. I mean, I work in an emergency department. I take care of a lot of people who have psychotic breaks, whether it's drug psychosis or manic episodes or schizophrenia. And it's funny because overwhelmingly they are hyper spiritual, hypersexual, those kinds of things, which you see a lot with, where people say, oh, is this a possession? Because they say these things that are sometimes crude or very sexual in nature, or involve the devil or God. Sometimes it's hard to differentiate, because even at work I get people who are convincing in some ways. But,
Right. We had a residential, this has been several years ago, in Castle, was on his way. And he's been trained in, I think most everyone knows he's in law enforcement, and he's been trained to recognize, different drugs and alcohol.
And do a field sobriety tests, those kinds of things.
And so he was running late to this one, and he had told us he was running late. And so we got started without him. And at one point, I stepped out into the other room and I called him and I said, "You need to get here fast because she is either full on possessed or high as a kite."
Or she's on meth, because that's your biggie right there.
Yeah.
Meth causes some pretty impressive drug psychosis.
Right. So he got there, did a sobriety test on her, and she was on meth. And he said to her, he says, "When was the last time you did meth?" And she said, "Oh, it's been a month ago." And he says, "Try again." "Oh, it's about a week ago." How about an hour ago?"
Little closer.
Does an hour
yeah.
ago sound better? Yeah. So definitely can be, you have to be careful. So, all this is going on. The Gletzels have a daughter. Her name is Debbie. She is obviously, terrified of everything that's going on, because we can tell this story, roughly in 45 minutes, but she's living it for months and months on end. And so she asked her boyfriend, Arnie Johnson, to move in because she didn't feel safe. And so she said, "Move in. I'll feel better if you're here." And so he did. So he moved in because he wanted to help keep her safe.
And he was like 21.
Mm-hmm. And he was actually present at one of the exorcisms. And, he loves his girlfriend, little brother. He just loves little brother too. And he's watching what's going on in this exorcism. And he wants to protect David. And so he jumps in and he encourages the demons to enter his body instead.
Right, he gives them permission.
Right. And that's something that we as a group always tell people on public investigations. Do not antagonize them. Do not invite them to come home with you. Do not give them any kind of an invitation at all. Because like you said earlier with the snowmobiling witches, they might not wallop you now. They might not wallop you next year. It could be 10 years, but you will get walloped.
Yeah, they're patient.
Mm-hmm. They've
They'll
got
wait.
all the time in the world.
And that's one of the things, when people talk about possession or just they're opportunistic. I mean, they're going to wait until you're at your weakest point, right? That's when most
Predators
come and get you, is when you're in a moment of weakness, and boom, that's when they pounce. They're not going to come after you when you're strong. They're not going to come after you when you're resilient. They're going to come after you when you are worn down.
Yes. And then they'll find the weak spot, and then they wear you down even further until you get to the point where you just give up and say, whatever, take over.
Right. That's what they want.
It's exactly what they want, and that's in every single demonic story, movie, based on the true story. It's the same cycle every
Right.
So
single
there are
time.
the 3 steps of possession.
Yes.
Okay. And they are infestation.
Infestation, oppression, possession. And it's a process, and there's not a time limit on this. It's not like 3 weeks and then 6 weeks and then 4 months. Some people can argue that there's 5, and if there's 5 steps, it's encroachment, then infestation, oppression, possession, and death. Because again, that is their
Ultimate goal.
Sure.
ultimate goal.
You just got your bookends on there.
Right.
That's pretty much the difference between the 3 and the 5.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's get started and let's end.
Let's be done now. Okay.
Yep. So the interesting thing is, you do not want to give these entities any kind of invitation.
Or permission.
Or permission. And the Warrens warned him not to do what he was doing. Yeah, and I wasn't there, but I'm sure that they all said, okay, no matter what happens, do not do this. And when he was doing it, they probably said, don't do the thing. You're doing the thing.
Should probably stop that.
Don't do the thing.
Well, they also said that he'd worked as a landscaper and he was working all day, and then he would stay up all night with David to try to comfort him so the family could rest, and so he was exhausted at the time that he did this.
Right. Again, so right there is going to be your weakness.
Already weak.
There's your worn down. And there's a quote by Ed Warren that I wrote down that I wanted to share because I really like this. He says, this is as far as giving them an invitation. "It's just one of those things you never do. Not if you know anything about this sort of thing. You never do it.
Yeah.
Don't give them an opening.
Ever." So, anyway, Debbie and Arnie decided that they were going to move out of the house to protect themselves. They'd gotten to the point where they just said, this is too much, we're out.
This was after Arnie gave the invitation.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and at this time, it wasn't manifesting in him. Okay? And so, they move out, but slowly he starts to show the same symptoms that David did. He would go into trances, he would growl, he would, say that he was seeing this beast, and then he'd have no memory of it. And these are the exact same things that David had been doing and wasn't doing anymore because
They moved on.
they moved. They're like, hey, look, new bigger house, right?
Where we have permission to set up.
Yep.
Yeah, and maybe, an adult male be a better target than 11-year-old.
Right. And and I don't know exactly how it went down, but with an 11-year-old, they still have to gain permission.
Mhm.
And so,
That's where the imaginary friend part might have come in.
right. And this is why when you're on a ghost investigation and little sad Bobby Joe, who was talking to you, and the kids were so mean to him, and you just want to take him home with you. No, don't, because then you're going to start growling and hissing
Right.
and seeing old men with hooves walking around your bedroom.
You don't know what you're signing up for something. You're not quite sure
Yeah.
what it is.
So when you go on an investigation with us and we say, don't invite anything home, this is why.
Even if it sounds like a fairly benign
Well,
child spirit.
Don't you think, like the mom and the sister, though, doing the witchcraft, they invited it in? I think he was pretty much an innocent target.
Right.
David was.
It probably brought it into the home, and then we
They
talked
found
about
the weakest link.
David being, the kind of innocent
Right.
child that was just like, hey, here's what I see a person, I'm interacting with this person, and the more you interact with it, the more
Yeah.
likely there is
Well,
to take a hold of you. Right?
Exactly, and it goes to Annabelle.
Mhm.
Annabelle, this doll's moving, and the girls thought it was cute and fun, and it was a game.
And started
playing with it, and then it got ugly.
seeing what it could do. Right.
So again, the same cycle over and over. So anyway, so Arnie's starting to do the weirds. Well, Debbie worked as a groomer, or in
At a pet place. Yeah,
she-
a dog sheltering.
she worked in a dog shelter.
Housing place.
and her manager's name was Alan Bono. And this was in February of 1981. Debbie and 3 of her sisters and Arnie were all at work, hanging out with the dogs. That's fun, right?
Sometimes.
That's what to say.
This
You
is
have
our-
some experience in this arena, I think.
Just a little.
So these sisters are 13 and 15 and 9. And their names are Janice. Janice is the 13-year-old. Wanda was 15. And Emily was 9. Keep in mind, I handwrote my notes. So...
Over the top of other notes, apparently.
Yes.
That's impressive.
Yes.
Reusing paper.
We're using paper. So they were at work. And Alan came in, and he's a nice guy. He's from Australia. Just a little trivia. It has nothing to do
Alan
with
being
anything.
the owner.
The manager.
The manager.
He was the brother of the owner. And he bought them lunch. Okay? Comes in. Hey, gang's all here. Let's have some lunch. Buy some lunch. He starts drinking. And kept drinking. And drank a lot. And he really got kind of drunk.
Did
and-
Arnie also participate in the drinking?
Possibly. I didn't write that part down. The movie, it says he did. So Debbie's getting concerned because Alan's just really getting sloshed, and her 3 little sisters are there. And so at some point she says, okay, you know what, we're out. I'm going to take my sisters home because this is getting out of hand.
You're schnockered.
And Alan reached out and grabbed the 9-year-old's hand. Grabbed her arm to stop them from going. Arnie lost it, stabbed Alan 5 times. He died.
Yeah. Sounds
Like a bit of an overreaction.
sounds yeah, I mean, you probably could have said, "Hey, don't do that."
There might have been a little of that.
Or
Again,
Grab
I
a
wasn't
knife.
there. But after he stabbed Alan, he walked. It was described as he walked off into the woods in a catatonic state. And then later, when they found him, he had no memory. I mean, he's covered with blood. He has no memory of what happened. he's standing there in the woods. Policemen are talking to him, and he's like, what happened? You killed a guy. What? I mean, I'm adding some words in there,
But pretty much, that's kind of
Hollywood did
down.
it. I can do it, right?
Sure.
Yeah, but basically, when they questioned him about what went on, he had no clue.
He
what
said he had
happened.
no idea what happened. Just blanked out.
Nope. Little side note. Judy, who's Debbie's mom, told the Washington Post after everything kind of went down, she said, "This world is being controlled by the devil. Look at the drugs, the prostitution, the gambling, the violence. The devil is in charge of it all." And I completely agree with that. My personal opinion is that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to just create chaos and mayhem, and he's doing a good job.
Some dark days.
Anywho, back to Arnie. Long story short, Lorraine had actually called the local police department 4 months before this happened, and she said, "You need to keep an eye on the goings-on there because something really bad is going to happen." She said, "I don't know what it is, but keep an eye on stuff."
There's some bad stuff going down.
And they probably thought she was insane, but she was right because some bad stuff did happen. So they, and by they, the Warrens, said, "We might be able to get you off on, if we can convince the jury that you were possessed and you had no knowledge of this, we might be able to get you off."
Right, but that defense had never been successful or even tried, from what I
In the
understand, in the
United
United States,
States.
right?
Right. And the judge said, "No.
They couldn't
Yeah.
use that defense.
They couldn't use that
No,
evidence.
we're not even going to go there.
We're not going with the devil made me do it.
Not doing that." But he was convicted of Arnie was Arnie was convicted of first-degree manslaughter on November 24th, 1981. He was a model prisoner, served 5 years, and they released him after 5 years because of his good conduct. He actually married Debbie, and they're still married to this day.
And didn't he get some kind of a degree while he was in?
I think so, and I don't remember what it was in. But, I mean, he went to school, followed all the rules.
And when I was watching Ed Warren today, I know I did some of the same research that you did here, 5 years. But Ed Warren today said that he only served 2 years, that Arnie only served 2 years in jail.
For killing somebody?
For killing someone.
Wow.
And he said, and if they would have allowed our evidence, he wouldn't have served even 1 day. Ed Warren, he's very,
He's convinced.
He's very
He's gonna
stern
push it.
about things. But
So I did get a little information today from a YouTube video, and they were talking about, I was following up on the Conjuring, the movie that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, and they talked about Mary, his wife, and she actually has passed away, just very recently,
oh, I didn't hear.
within the last, since the movie came out.
The mom.
Really?
The girl that married
Arnie.
His wife, because I just seen
Debbie.
Debbie.
her talking. I just watched a
I
little
just
skit
saw
of her.
Just saw it today that they,
Oh.
and it was a newer one, and they said that she has, passed. And I think it was cancer.
Oh.
Oh, it's too bad.
Oh.
So there's a lot of controversy, and there's always a lot of controversy around Ed and Lorraine. People are saying that they fake it, and they're trying to do it for money. Do I think that they wanted to make a little money off of writing some books? Absolutely, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they needed money to get out and be able to do some of the things they were doing as well.
Right. And whether or not, the way they made their money and the way they went about writing the books, I don't know.
Right.
But I don't believe that they have hoaxed or faked any evidence.
Right. I have a hard time believing that the fiscal incentive was the big thing, because it's not like, even these Conjuring stories, they didn't become these big,
Blockbuster movies.
Right. Until the last 10 years, maybe,
Yeah,
maybe
Ed's
even more
been
recently than
gone
that.
for most of it.
Right.
I was watching a couple of his lectures today, and he's showing pictures that have to be taken, have to be sent somewhere else to be exposed so they can see that there's a ghost in that picture, where we're just snapping something so quickly. And then I was even, if you wanted to contact them, or if you needed help, or if you wanted to tell them something, you just send, something to their P.O. Box 423 in Monroe, Connecticut. And I was like, Wow, that happens fast.
And it
Well-
seems like they had a pretty modest living and a modest home.
Yeah.
They weren't living in a mansion.
Well, they
or-
didn't charge people, so like these people weren't charged, but they were asked. So it's not they're not charged to come into the home, but charged to pay for their travel
Sure.
expenses,
Right.
which is fair.
Absolutely.
But that's not profitable.
So a couple of years ago, when Lorraine was still alive, Castle just called her up, ringy dingy on the phone.
And
she
answered,
answered.
Yeah,
right?
and had
Yeah.
a conversation with her
I
for
can imagine
like
she
an hour.
would. Yeah,
That's
she seems to be that type of person. I think that we could still. I point to my phone because I kept that PO box, because I bet you it's still active and Tony Sparrow will answer your requests.
Yeah.
So
And he is their nephew?
no, that he's Judy's husband,
Okay.
their daughter, Judy.
And I have met John Zaffis. He was actually in Utah a few years ago, and he's their nephew. Very, very nice man.
He's the one who's really big on haunted objects, right?
Yes. Yes, and he's written several books.
I'm going to go on a tangent because I want to say it. So I saw a thing where Lorraine was talking about Ed and how they would originally get into some of these homes that they were interested in doing it. And
Oh,
Ed,
this is a fun story.
And Ed they'd stop outside of a house that they wanted to go in and investigate. And Ed was a pretty good artist, and he would sit down and he would sketch the house and make a nice sketch of the house, take 30 or 40 minutes and sketch out the house. And then they would go up together and present the sketch, knock on the door and present the sketch to the homeowners, and then say, yeah, we did this, and, it really spoke to us. We'd love to come in and investigate.
Hi, you have a beautiful home filled with demons.
Yeah.
Can we come in? That's how they started
Interesting.
getting into homes originally.
By doing sketches of their houses.
I wonder how much those Ed sketches are worth now.
Oh, I don't know.
Right?
That'd be
It's pretty
interesting.
funny.
Yeah, and again, I am not an exorcist sanctioned by the Catholic Church by
And she's not going to be sketching your house. So.
any means. Oh no, unless you want like the stick person version of your house, you're not going to get a sketch either. But just having investigated, but researched Ed and Lorraine Warren, and reading their stories in their books, and watching lectures that they've given, and the information I have from the demonology class I took, they all just they match. I think they're giving it to you straight. Are they 100% correct on every single tidbit that they've investigated? They're human. They're going to make some mistakes. But I think in general they're spot on, and I don't think that they're hoaxing.
Right. Well, and then you give movie rights to Hollywood, and of course they're going to embellish some things.
Glamorize.
They're going to
Right.
they're going to. Even watching the movie, I felt to some extent, I'm like, some of this was probably embellished, but the
That is a
core
great
there
segue.
is pretty good.
Are you pretty much done with the investigation part?
Oh yeah, we got him married, and Debbie's passed on, so now
And he's
we
out
can
of
go to
prison.
the movie.
so-
And Arnie only served a couple years.
He only served a couple of years. The little boy is married, living his own life, David, and everybody's just living happily ever after until recently.
And so, as far as resolution from all of this, he goes and kills. Goes and kills.
The guy that they worked for at the pet place.
Right, and then voila, demon's gone.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not sure either.
I didn't look
just think
into
that's-
that.
I just think that's pretty interesting.
But
Well,
they did say there's
I
never
stabbed
been
him.
any problems or trouble.
I stabbed a dude to death, then I went to
Right.
jail, then I got out 2 years later, and we good.
Well,
So-
per the
Demon man moved
movie, right? Per the movie, we seen what happened.
So in all
Right.
honesty, as I was researching for this podcast, I probably read 12 to 14 different websites, different stories, because you know how it is. You got to read a whole bunch of stuff, try to filter out. Okay, I've read the same thing on these, and then not one of them said anything about where the demon went.
Yeah, I didn't get anything out of that either. Out of Ed and Lorraine, nobody talked
Yeah,
about
I
what
was
happened
curious.
after that.
Murdered a dude, and
Yeah,
all
got
is
what he-
well.
all he wanted and got the soul and left. I
And,
guess.
and we did touch bases, though, that they couldn't use the possession defense.
Mm-hmm.
That they did a self-defense. He made a self-defense plate. And originally they were looking at a first-degree murder with a death penalty.
Right.
That they were looking at pursuing. and they only ended up with a manslaughter charge, and 2 to 5 years.
Yeah, that's
being served.
That's pretty crazy that you're able to knock that down so much.
And they said he was a model prisoner, and that part of the reason that he got out early was because there was no problem. I mean, he never.
My guess is that once he got into jail, into prison, I wonder if the demons were like, well, we can't do anything here. Let's
Go
move
find
on
somebody
and
else."
find someone else we can
The
manipulate.
the devil made me do it defense was interesting, and I think they mentioned this in the movie a bit, where they said, hey, I mean, no one's disputing that God exists, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all swear on the Bible and, before God, basically, that we're going to tell the truth. And if we believe that there's a God, then in this dualistic reality that we exist in, doesn't that make sense that there would be an opposing force, that there would be a devil?
Yes, absolutely. So on to the movie. I find it interesting because in the actual case, they talk about a well that's associated somehow with the home.
Right, but so I'm with you on that. So in some of the research I came across that, but today, listening to Ed and Lorraine, no mention of the well,
No, Mel. No.
and they mentioned it like the movie. So now I have contradiction as to how that happened.
So they talked about some little skull figurine creature in the basement.
No skull figurine. No, the part where Arnie yells and tells the devil to come to him and to leave David to come
Alone?
and attack him.
Okay.
That's really how it happened. But I also am with you where I read that he went to a well and looked down into the well and seen the face.
Right. And then the little boy David had also seen the old man around the well. Where in the movie, Lorraine went under the house and found some little conjuring witch thing,
Totem.
and then it looked like jaws of a
Maybe on a bone.
animal,
And, yeah.
voodoo thing. And then there was some guy out in a house. Was it an old sheriff or an old
No,
priest?
he'd been an old
He's a
priest.
Old
priest.
priest.
And he had been tied in, and this is a tie-in that they made back into the other Conjuring movies. On the earlier one where they had the Satan worshippers, and there was a
Right.
tie-in there. But in all of the material that I saw or read about the Devil Made Me Do It case, there was no mention of that. That I believe is a Hollywood
Right.
Attempt to tie
embellishment
it all together.
to tie things in, to pull
Right.
it in together, because they talk about the
they brought in this woman and she was in this cavern underneath the priest's house.
Maybe she was the
and-
snowmobiler,
Hey, she could have been.
Dun, dun, dun.
right? Because she was basically practicing witchcraft
Oh,
down
absolutely.
there in that form. So that could just be their version of
The
the
tie-in.
of the
witch,
snowmobiler.
yeah.
Right. It seemed like a lot of the movie was focused on this cursed object that was
Right.
underneath the house.
Right, and so again with the Warrens, the only object they had was the dinosaur.
The dinosaur.
Yep.
Yeah, which, I just thought, man.
But Hollywood, and I get it.
they're out to make a buck.
They want to, make it interesting. They have to add some stuff to, keep you riveted to the TV. I mean, at one point towards the end, Ed is trying to kill Lorraine.
Right.
He's going after her because this lady has somehow
Possessed
possessed
him almost.
him.
Right.
And
The focus of the movie, it was less about demonic possession and more about being cursed almost, is kind of the focus that I felt like the movie had, was like, oh, yeah, you're being manipulated and controlled, but it's because of this coven and it's because of this cursed object that everybody's kind of
right, and they
able
got
to be
They
manipulated.
got rid of the demonic entity by breaking the table.
right. That's
Yeah,
right.
the altar.
There's an altar with a whole bunch of different
Yep.
occult things on there, whatever you want to call it.
And then, in the murder scene, they didn't have all the sisters. It was, and I get it, you're trying to keep it simple. So I kind of get it from Hollywood's point there.
And I didn't hear Ed and Lorraine today talk anything about Ed having a heart attack.
They said he did have a heart attack, but not the way they portrayed it.
Oh yeah, he was all about the heart pills in that movie.
Yes.
It was like multiple
Yes.
times, I need my heart pills.
And then for her to have one in her locket with
That's
Judy's
right.
picture. Yeah.
That's-
They made a pretty big deal out of that.
saved the day.
Right.
So-
Yeah, so he did have a heart attack, but it didn't
During
have anything to do with
the case.
the case.
Yeah, so that's what I thought. Is I've known that he had heart problems and things, but I think that was something they grasped from somewhere else in their life and pulled that in so they could have that dramatic scene of wherever he is where my home is. And it's like, okay, I'm sure that's like really kind of happened, but not in that time frame.
Well, and I don't know how if this is one thing I didn't research, and now as we're doing this, I wish I had, is how they actually met, Ed and Lorraine, because they do address that in the movie of how they met.
Oh, how they talk about it in the movies, how they talk about it is for real. They met when they were really young before
they?
he went into the service.
And they met in a gazebo.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and he called her a
Okay.
gold digger.
Yeah, they didn't say that in the movie.
Yeah, because he offered to buy a bunch of girls at the place a Coke, and she ordered an ice cream soda.
Because
So
she
he called
doesn't
her a
like
gold
Coke.
digger.
Wow. And then, there's the little touching moment at the end where he gives
Makes
her a
her a
gazebo.
gazebo. Yeah.
So one of the things at the beginning of the movie that I noticed, and if when you watch the movie, the first thing that hit me was the opening scenes, and it's an homage to The Exorcist.
Mhm.
It's
Oh, yeah.
almost identical. I mean, the whole shadow in the house and the priest
Right.
walking up, and I looked at it and I said, this is
Might as well have had
The
a sweet
Exorcist.
hat and a briefcase because we're pretty much there.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of things. There's a really good YouTube video about it where it talks about a lot of the different parts of cinematic, paranormal things that have been pulled into this. And I'm trying to remember the waterbed. There's a scene in another movie about the waterbed, and I don't remember if they said that was an actuality in the Conjuring case itself.
The waterbed that was real for
Okay.
today. With
For
Ed
the
and
case?
Lorraine. Uh-huh,
Yeah, but that's also been in another major paranormal kind of movie, that Hollywood's done, and so it was a tie-in.
Was it Poltergeist?
No, I don't think Poltergeist had a waterbed.
I'm terrible with movies. Don't ask me.
But
I should just be quiet.
but there's a
right now.
lot of things that were brought into the movie. When I say they're almost an homage or a callback to other Hollywood blockbuster paranormal movies, and it pulls in because it gives you that feeling of this is familiar and scary.
Right, and the reputation of The Exorcist, oh my goodness. When it came out, it was just, if you're automatically going there, you're in for a ride, right?
And one
Oh,
of the other
absolutely.
things that I came up with, so when they were filming The Conjuring 3 and 1, 2, I guess this is actually 7.
The Conjuring universe.
Yeah.
The Conjurverse.
That they have priests come in because they're out there, they're talking about this stuff, they're saying some of these stuff, they're conjuring. And there's the concern of what they're really actually bringing up. So they do have people come in, do blessings, and take care of the casts and the
They're creating
scenes.
that environment that's inviting for dark stuff.
Yep, and it's archetypical. I kept hearing that word today, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
It's an
But I was like,
archetype.
yep, it is an archetype.
You set things up, and it's, something that's archetypal is something that's kind of universally understood, right? And when you do certain things, you invite certain things, and that's consistent everywhere.
Right.
even
exactly.
if you're parodying something, that act may bring about ramifications or consequences that you didn't intend in reality.
Yeah, and that was something I didn't even take into consideration really with these guys making these movies as to the effects. But you always kind of hear of like on Poltergeist and some of these older movies, some of the repercussions.
Yeah, the curses that you hear from, Poltergeist is a pretty classic one.
Right.
Even in The Exorcist, I'm pretty sure they talked about kind of how the crew, that there was a curse or bad things happened, to people who participated in the creation of that movie.
Right. Right.
Where
guess
did we
we're
go
done.
from here? And we stopped.
And that
Anyway,
was that.
Even though Hollywood does their thing and puts their own spin on it, I have seen, you said there's 7 movies in the Conjurverse.
Yes.
I think I have seen all of them but 2.
That's like the Conjuring movies, the Annabelle movies, and the Nun movie? Banshees? Is
The
that the other
Nun,
one?
Yeah,
And I think The Nun is more of just a spin off of.
And that's what they said. So, like, when they show the nun picture, when they're showing the museum, they were like, we've got to tell the story of that. So, to me, that's a made-up story of
Yeah.
a picture, and I don't have any interest in that. And they also do a backstory of Annabelle, and that it's just a theory. They don't know.
It wasn't based in any
Right.
real event. It was that was Hollywood magic making for that.
Based on true events.
Exactly.
It's based. I mean, it's-
And by based we mean we made all of this up. But
Absolutely.
Annabelle was a real doll.
But don't you
but
think?
not that doll that they represent.
Yeah, not
Raggedy
even
Ann.
that doll.
Yeah, it might have been scarier if they had a Raggedy Ann doll.
I think it would be scarier if
They
it was
are.
Raggedy Ann.
You had them under the stairs.
That's right. Terrifying.
Yes. I think that it would terrify every little girl who has a Raggedy Ann. They couldn't do that.
So they had to make a creepy ventriloquist doll looking thing. Kind
Yeah,
of.
I do
Yeah.
think in the movie, though, kind of the conclusion of the movie and most of the things after the actual trial and that area with Ed and Lorraine and some of those things that move forward, my take on that is that's almost all Hollywood.
Mhm.
That there was
Yes.
I didn't see any talk about that because they didn't talk about, anybody dying, associated with the case like would have happened in the movie. Different things like that. The old priest, they didn't bring him up. So there's a lot of things in the movie that I think are very much Hollywood.
Well, if you did it exactly the way the case went, it would be more of a documentary, and it would miss a little bit of that entertainment shock jump factor.
It would miss
I
a
think.
lot of the entertainment yeah.
And one of the things that they were focusing on was the love story of Ed and Lorraine that they were talking about today in the making of The Conjuring. So that really was a key focus of keeping the balance of the movie, just so it wasn't a terrifying movie. It was kind of a love story.
Yeah.
Conjuring 3.
I enjoyed
a love
it.
Story.
Right? Better than some of the love stories I've seen, right? It's okay.
Right.
Nice.
Well, last but not least, get your Supernatural Hour swag at advancedparanormal.com. I am currently wearing a Supernatural Hour shirt.
That's a good looking shirt you have on there. I
Thank you.
noticed that.
Thank you. I didn't bring my mug. I was intending to. I always intend to, and I forget.
I'm gonna have to take a picture of the mug
You should. It's a nice mug.
and put it up on the sites.
Yeah, we
TikTok it.
put it on the TikTok. But we got all sorts of stuff: tapestries, shirts, bumper stickers. I have a sticker to put on my laptop. So check it out.
And check out our shop at advancedparanormal.com/shop. You can get sage sprays, oils, lavender, rollers, lip balm. Rogue produces all that stuff, and we're really appreciative to her. We'll be selling them on the website, advancedparanormal.com/shop, and also at the events that we go to.
Let's also do a shout out to our new team members. We've got Chuck and Kelly and Venus and Harlan, and we are super excited to have them aboard. Also, just a little shout out to some of our friends, which are Barbary Coast, Dalton's and Oteos, if you want some good food. All three of those will do you well. Utah Freestride for Pets, Castle's Nature Studio. He does portraiture. That's my new favorite word.
Portraiture.
I can't do
Can you have
tapestry
portraiture
anymore.
with a tapestry?
Portraiture. No, and that annoyed myself, so I won't do that again for a while. And then Boar, which is off-road backcountry adventure rally. And I was just kind of flipping through Facebook a little bit this morning, and they're doing another service project. They're service project maniacs. They're amazing. Anyway, stay haunty, my spooky friends.
Love you, Necklace.
Have a good one.
Hey, good night.
You've been listening to the Supernatural Hour at AdvancedParanormal.com. The Supernatural Hour is part of the Radio Ronin network found at RadioRonin.com. Copyright 2021 by Advanced Paranormal Services.